Welcome back, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Jason, and I will be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, I'm going to do a little bit of a rundown of the past week in the CFL. I know I'm a little late on this. I just had a whole bunch of stuff to do with schools this week, midterms and everything. But better late than never. I wanted to get this out before the next week of CFL games got underway. And I also wanted to talk about, just brush upon a few news items that have happened in the CFL, a bunch of signings, a couple trades, and talk about that. So it's going to be a bit of an open-ended video, but I hope you enjoy the structure of it nonetheless. But really quickly, before we get started, if you want to support the show, the best way to do it is by hitting the like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. I greatly appreciate it. And with that said, let's just get on with the video and talk about Week 11 in the CFL. I don't really have much to say, and that's kind of a good thing because I'm getting this out so late. So let's talk about Winnipeg and Edmonton on Friday night last week, and not too much to take away from it. Edmonton kind of put up more of a fight than they did the previous week, but ultimately they were falling apart in the fourth quarter and really couldn't get much consistent offense going. Their defense really held them in it. Their defensive line really showed up for one of the first times this season and really put pressure on Zach Collaros. And one of the first times Winnipeg's offensive line has not looked very good. And I think the big story for Winnipeg coming out of this game is just the health of Andrew Harris going forward. He's obviously a big difference maker for this offense. Hasn't really made a huge impact in the receiving game like I thought he would. But in terms of running the ball, this is a guy they rely on to carry the ball 20 times a game. And there's no team that likes to run the ball as much as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers this year. And I think that's a big storyline to follow going forward. They just signed Shaq Cooper, which I won't talk about later on because he's more of a depth signing. I think Brady Oliveira is going to be the guy in Andrew Harris's absence. But nice to pick up Cooper as a good insurance option there. And then for Edmonton, I mean, the big story is that they traded away Trevor Harris this week. And the big thing here is, I don't know what they're doing with the quarterback situation, but it's good that they made a decision one way or the other. I still think, like, you gotta follow through on a plan. And I think that Trevor Harris, it's good that he's in a fresh new situation in Montreal. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video. But Edmonton, not much to take away from this game for them. It's kind of a lost season at this point now that they're 2-7 on the year. And we're basically evaluating for next year at this point if you're the Edmonton Elks. And then Montreal and Ottawa, I didn't get a chance to watch too much of this game, so I had to watch a lot of it on a replay, a little bit of a condensed version, just fast-forwarding through the plays. And, I mean, I was pretty impressed with Matthew Schultz overall. I think that's the thing with this Trevor Harris trade. Everybody's going to say, oh, Trevor Harris is going to come in here and he's ultimately going to be the starter here for the Montreal Alouettes. But I don't think that's necessarily the case if Matthew Schultz continues to play and execute the offense that he's been learning since he's been here since 2017. He's been here for quite a while here in Montreal, and he's waited for his turn to be the full-time guy in this offense. He has a hell of an opportunity in front of him. He plays Toronto tomorrow night, so going to be very interesting to see how he followed up. But he looked pretty good in this game, but again, you don't really know what to take away from it in a game against Ottawa. And Ottawa just made so many mistakes in this game. And, I mean, Caleb Evans, I think the honeymoon is officially over after that first amazing game that he had as a starter. Kind of surprised everybody. But then, you know, obviously the interceptions have just propped up the last few weeks. But I think they're going to still stick with them for next week. I think that's what they said. But we'll see what happens with the Ottawa Red Blacks quarterback situation. It's kind of been a mess all year, except for that one game against Edmonton a few weeks ago. But I think Ottawa, again, like Edmonton, it's very much an evaluation year the rest of the year. And they're going to try to play the role of spoiler the rest of the season. And then the final game of the week was BC and Calgary. And this was just a complete whopping. And BC just seems like they have regressed back to their 2019 form where they were just a poor offensive line team. Just not giving Mike Riley any time to throw. And then without this huge explosive play element given by Lucky Whitehead, who is now out of the lineup with a broken hand. I mean, it looked ugly last week against the Calgary Stampeders, who were just rounding into form, and with 3 straight victories, been very, very impressed with them. And, I mean, they've really developed into this second best team in the West, if not the league right now. The team that a lot of people thought they were going to be, or they would be, because of their history as a team. And I'm just really excited to see how Bo Levi Mitchell continues to improve his play going forward. He's still not back to that MOP level Bo Levi Mitchell that we've seen in years past, but he had his first game of the season that he did not throw an interception this week. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but I mean, he's had some terrible luck with interceptions this year, including a 5-interception game against BC in week 2. So really good sign, for the Calgary Stampeders that he did not throw a pick last week. And I mean, he's getting better every week. The defense is getting better every week. They just added Trey Roberson, who's the best corner in the CFL, in my opinion, from 2019. So, I mean, just a really, really good signs going forward for the Calgary Stampeders, who have a very manageable schedule, as I pointed out in a video last week, going forward. And, I mean, it's hard not to trust that they will be a force to be reckoned with come playoff time. And then finally, I just kind of want to touch on a few signings and debuts from around the league that are going to be happening this week. So we'll start up with the players that are going to be coming back into the lineup this week. So Duke Williams, who was the CFL's leading receiver, I believe, 2018, and then he signed with my Buffalo Bills in the NFL and has been kind of kicking his way around practice roster, active rosters, had some moments, had a big playoff game against the Houston Texans a few years ago, made about 7-8 catches in that game. But overall, very inconsistent in his time with Buffalo. Big-bodied receiver who was just a really dominant force at the CFL level with the Edmonton Eskimos at the time. And I'm really excited to see what he brings to the Saskatchewan Roughriders offense that really desperately needs it. I think their problems are not necessarily related to the receiving core as much as it is the offensive line that has kind of regressed a bit as the season has gone on. But I think that element of having a big contested catch receiver to add to these Canadian pieces that they have that have been very, very well in terms of their performance this season is going to make a huge difference for Saskatchewan going forward the rest of the season. And then they get Shaq Evans back from injury, which is going to be huge for stretching the field and giving them that all-around number one receiver threat in this offense once again. And I'm just really excited to see that impact that it has on the Saskatchewan Roughriders the rest of the season. And then a couple of defensive back signings this week. Between Winston Rose going back to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers after having a long kick of the can of it in the NFL. Never really got onto the field all too much. More of a practice roster guy. I think it was with the Bengals. And, I mean, I think Winnipeg has replaced him pretty well. Him and Marcus Sales, who is now in BC. They replaced those guys pretty well in this this defense, but I think ultimately it doesn't hurt to bring in a guy like Winston Rose, who led the league in interceptions in 2019, just a complete ball hawk. And although interceptions are a very funky way of evaluating defensive back play, this guy was just a playmaker, and I think that's going to make a huge difference to this Winnipeg Blue Bombers defense that is already so dominant. And I'm not too sure where he slots in here and who he's going to be pushing out of the lineup, but I ultimately think he'll be a starter by the end of the season here. And I'm just really excited to see how he fits in with this Winnipeg Blue Bombers defense. And then the other defensive back signing is the guy I already mentioned, Trey Roberson, a really, really dominant defensive back from 2019 for the Calgary Stampeders, goes back to Calgary here. And the funny thing is with him is he had a bunch of interceptions, I think, in the first handful of weeks of 2019. And then they just stopped throwing at him, and he ultimately did not lead the league in interceptions. He finished with 7 interceptions, but Winston Rose was able to overtake him for the interception lead in the CFL that year. But just a really, really lengthy corner, just great instincts, even though he faces a lot of targets from that boundary corner spot that is one of the more targeted positions on a CFL field. Not a lot of teams like to throw to the field side, which is the wider side of the field. People prefer to throw to the short side of the field because it's an easier throw for quarterbacks to make. And Trey Roberson just plays that boundary corner just so well. And I'm really excited to see how he adapts back to the CFL game after being away for a year plus here. And I'm just really happy to see these kind of guys back in the CFL. And it's just very exciting. And then finally, I just wanted to talk about the Trevor Harris trade to Montreal. And I brushed on this again a little bit earlier with the Matthew Schultz thing. And I think ultimately Trevor Harris will only see the field if Matthew Schultz has a really bad game. And I honestly could see it happening this week. I think Toronto Argonauts could give Matthew Schultz a lot of troubles with the personnel that they have on that defense. They're going to get Haynock Mwamba probably back this week as well at middle linebacker. And I'm just really excited to see how that goes for them. Trevor Harris, this is a great opportunity for him if he does get a chance to get onto the field because they actually have a pretty good offensive line. This offensive line has really been one of the surprises for me this season. I had them ranked like 7th in my roster review series, but they performed much above the sum of their parts, in my opinion, this year. Really low in terms of the sacks allowed and pressures allowed category this year. And I know you have Vernon Adams before, who is a really hard quarterback to take down, but ultimately, I think this offensive line is going to be a big plus that wasn't a big factor in Edmonton, which offensive line really regressed this season with Trevor Harris behind center there. And I think that's a huge plus for Trevor Harris as a pocket passer. And then you have a bunch of great combination of really complementary skill sets in this receiving core. I think Eugene Lewis and Jake Weineke. Jake Weineke's having a fabulous season, by the way. I think he has like 8 touchdowns, and the next closest guy has 4 receiving touchdowns. So, great season for Jake Weineke. And I think Trevor Harris, assuming that Vernon Adams doesn't come back, we might see him come playoff time, and this is a great opportunity for him to kind of rewrite the script on his season, and I'm just really excited to see what he can do with it. But with that said, those are going to be my takeaways from this week in the CFL, and I know this is a bit late of a video, and I apologize again for that. Just a lack of time to do things these last few weeks, but I just wanted to give you guys some content nonetheless, even if you guys don't have time to watch this video before week 12 starts this week. But ultimately, again, really appreciate all you guys for watching. And with that said, let me know what you think in the comment section. All the news, the last week's games, who you think's going to win this week. I'll do my game picks tomorrow morning. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.